Brought to you by Southern Trust Home Services, 540-208-3425. Get into a Southern state of mind. Hey there, it's meteorologist Jamie Singleton with you here at 9:05. It is Tuesday night. It's September the 3rd, and hopefully everyone got into the routine of things pretty well after maybe having your Labor Day off yesterday on Monday. Watching the latest with Dorian and continuing to watch things go back and forth here. One of the things that we've been watching for the past couple of days is the fact this thing was over Grand Bahama Island and sat over the same area of that, just wobbling back and forth across the poor island for folks there in the Bahamas there, seeing the eye wall in various states, depending on the exact positioning of the eye wall, for about at least 30 hours. And you're looking at video now coming out of the Bahamas, some of the aerials that are just heartbreaking and devastating, really. But now we've seen a bit of we saw a downturn with the storm in terms of intensity and in terms of some drier air even wrapping into the west side of it as it sat there long enough. I knew that was going to happen because even with the island there so narrow and not really, not a lot of friction to weaken the storm, it's still, because the center, I think, was over the landmass, you may have had some weakening there. Also, there's just a fact that we talk about sea surface temperatures a lot when we talk about hurricanes developing. And if you get a hurricane that just sits there and it rains for 30 to 36 hours straight, there's not a lot of sunlight, obviously, that gets through it at all. And so you just see a cooling of that water, and you see the hurricane also, it can't sustain itself for too long. The atmosphere just can't allow it. The mechanisms that's providing the hurricane, it can't physically handle that much wind for a long amount of time, thankfully. So we did see it go down to about 110 miles an hour, which is where it's at now. And it is moving now, moving away from land. So what's going to happen more than likely, the outer bands of this getting close to Florida, you can see the cloud cover. It looks a little more impressive, but if I put the radar on here, and it may take a little while to load this composite image here, but you'll see more of the central part of the storm still near the center. But what's happened now over the past day or so is a huge increase on the radar, looking more like a storm to be more concerned about up and down the coast, because what happens is you trade one thing for another. So if you take the wind speed down, the wind field is less tight near the center, so the wind field expands, and it's gotten to be a bigger storm even though it's a weaker storm. So, if you're near the center, of course, you don't want those devastating winds. But if you're up and down the coast, you don't want the hurricane force winds, or even the tropical storm force winds, to reach too far away from the center. Unfortunately, what's happening is the storm is getting bigger and is expected to continue kind of on that trend as it goes up the coast. Now, we'll have two things going on. We're going to have, obviously, it's going now over warmer water again, and less frictional effect near the center up underneath this thing. So it could actually go back up in intensity. It could fluctuate in intensity some over the next 24 hours or so. And then it's supposed to be picked up by an upper level trough that'll be coming out of the Great Lakes with an associated cold front later on tomorrow. And that should, and I'm in agreement on this, all the models are indicating that, and I don't see any reason to veer from them this time. When I do have a reason to go out on my own, I usually do. But really, I think the Hurricane Center track is going to be pretty much on target. And I do think that we'll see this kind of, skirt the Carolina coast. Now, that's not good news for the Carolinas. Anywhere north of Charleston, South Carolina, and I mentioned this on my blog on Patreon yesterday, I think anywhere from Charleston north through Wilmington and the Outer Banks, especially in the Outer Banks, are going to get slammed by this storm. And keep in mind, a lot of the damage, a lot of the deaths and injuries occur not from the wind, from the storm surge that we see. So even in Georgia, even though I think the center is going to be pretty far away from there, you can see how the storm has widened, and now we're getting some of these tropical storm force winds well inland with the some of the outer parts of the storm, outer bands of the storm. Now, the storm has widened quite a bit, and you look at this just from the other day, and the radar picture was just about out to right here, and now it's way out now, and especially north of the storm, where we've got a little bit of a surface trough, an old front that came through the other day on Monday that stalled over the area. So you're going to maybe find some precipitation kind of developing here well north of the storm, as some of the modeling is showing. But anyway, it's a fairly healthy storm. I still don't want to downgrade the fact that 110 mile per hour maximum sustained winds are nothing to mess around with, especially with such a wide range of wind and of rain. Now that we're seeing a weaker storm again, we see a larger storm. So I haven't preloaded a lot of imagery here, but I thought I would go more live off the cuff tonight, since I'm kind of gearing up for tomorrow morning and tomorrow afternoon. But this is a look at the high resolution NAM model from this afternoon. And what we have plotted for you here, this is predicted wind gusts off the model itself. Now, this doesn't take into account local forecaster expertise, doesn't take into account what normally happens. A lot of times, the wind gust product, what I've noticed, especially here locally, can be way too high for our area. That being said, we still need to watch those trends. So starting out here, and I am, let's see, let me get my single loop on here. This would be Wednesday at midnight, I believe. So we'll go to 1 a.m. This is 2 a.m. And during the day, Wednesday, this is tomorrow. No, I'm sorry. This is Wednesday night into early Thursday. My bad. Let me get this image too where you can see it. That's the only problem with going off the cuff. All right, so Wednesday night into Thursday is when things will really start to ramp up from Savannah on up into Charleston and Myrtle Beach. And during the day Wednesday here locally, we will likely cloud over at some point. And we'll probably see some breezes develop, maybe just around 10 miles an hour, but there'll be some kind of wind developing across the area. It won't be a lot of rainfall. There will be a front moving in later in the evening tomorrow for Wednesday evening into Wednesday night, which may provide a couple of showers and storms for a few folks. And that front's going to get hung up and wash out as the hurricane moves up the coast. Now, the only thing that could happen, the only thing that may happen is that front could try to pull the storm a little farther inland. The models today have trended a little bit farther west with the track, and so that's something I'm monitoring, because if it goes too far west, I'm going to get out of Wilmington and come back home in a real quick hurry. But if it stays on course, I'll probably stay down there. But what I'm expecting for our area would be minimal impact, although we are going to have some impact from us. So as we go into, this is Thursday morning by 7 a.m., you've got 30 to 40 mile per hour gusts starting to creep out of Myrtle Beach. And then you've also got, let's see me do something real quick. You've also got the hurricane force gusting here reaching the Charleston, South Carolina area. As we go through the day on Thursday, things will just continue to go downhill. And again, I'm focusing mainly on our area down through the Carolinas. I do think that Georgia will get some of this too, but I'm going to focus more on the regional forecast picture here. So if we go to the 9 a.m., you can see the storm continues to wind up, and by noon, we could have an eye just offshore of Charleston, South Carolina. Now, that could be around 100, 110 mile per hour eye wall that we're still looking at, if not just above hurricane force. And then you've also got these high winds coming in out of the east into the Wilmington area, into Myrtle Beach, gusting up to about 68 to 70 miles per hour, getting up to near hurricane force. And here locally, as I mentioned, tomorrow by lunchtime, again, you're going to have some winds at about 15 to maybe 20 miles per hour in gusts. That would be in gusts, not constant wind. These are gusts that are predicted by the model. And again, the models typically bring too much wind into Virginia in a setup like this. I feel like what will happen is we'll kind of wedge in for the day on Thursday with some cloudiness, and that'll hold down the mixing that tends to get the wind up a little bit. So this is Thursday, 4 p.m. And I do want to draw your attention to a good part of eastern North Carolina, eastern South Carolina here. Make sure I got an Instagram thing going on here too. Fayetteville to Raleigh, we start to get windy as well. And by that point, Wilmington should be getting slammed with the front edge of the storm. Again, winds will be out of the east. We're going to have some storm surge. I was talking to my buddy Tim Armstrong. He's, by the way, housing me with his wife Jamie, both of the meteorologists. Tim's the lead forecaster down at the National Weather Service in Wilmington. He's got 2 kids. They have a house inland, and they're going to ride out the storm. And I think he's been through, I don't know how many, probably easily 5, if not 6 or more storms down there. But anyway, I feel good knowing what he knows and having his expertise at hand, because when it comes to something out of the area, I'm going to trust somebody I know, especially another meteorologist that's with the expertise. Tim's one of the smartest meteorologists I know. I'll put it that way. But I want to thank him, if he's watching, for letting me come down there. I was a little worried he was going to say no, but he's like, yeah, come on down. But anyway, we'll be watching this Myrtle Beach, North Myrtle Beach, Wilmington by the afternoon Thursday. It's going to get really bad fast up and down the Carolina coast. And again, you can see how big the wind field is here, much larger than when we showed you the storm over the Bahamas. It was stronger, but it was so concise. And now you're looking at Fayetteville to Raleigh here. This is a Thursday at 7 o'clock. And possibly just east of Myrtle Beach. That would put Myrtle Beach in a pretty bad spot as far as storm surge, those battering waves on top of the storm surge. What the storm surge is it's a mound of water. The ocean literally rises up underneath the hurricane because of the spread of the wind field and the pressure at the center of the storm. It actually physically takes the ocean water up. And that's what you saw in the Bahamas. It was up to the second stories and attics of some of these folks. And nothing like that up and down the Carolina coast, but several feet, of storm surge, over 7 or so feet in some of these areas. And so, again, the waves on top of that, they're going to do probably 70% of the damage, and you're going to see some wind damage there as well. There's also going to be a lot of rainfall coming into the eastern Carolinas. It gets right up against our area, and I'll show you the radar here in just a second, the future radar. 10 p.m. on Thursday, we could have an eye just around the Wilmington area, and I've been watching this very closely, again, with great interest. But notice here, the barrier islands do a pretty good job of holding back these higher gusts of wind. Again, this is off the model, 80 to 90 miles an hour or so, but just inland, 58 to 62 miles an hour. Tim feels pretty good about us seeing some hurricane force or close to hurricane force gusting at his house based on what he's seen and his expertise. So I'm taking that into heart. That will be at the maximum part of the storm, I think at 10 p.m., 7 to 10 p.m., or maybe up to midnight in the Wilmington, North Carolina area. And that's also going to put the highest winds coming out of the Fayetteville, Lumberton area, inland in the Florence and Sherrill, up to maybe Rockingham, and then Goldsboro, getting into New Bern by this time as well. And we don't want to forget about Virginia Beach and Virginia. I'll show you what will be happening here according to the model. We're looking at 25 to 35 mile per hour wind gusts coming in here Thursday and Thursday night. So especially for locations east of the Roanoke Valley, south and east, you could be looking at wind speeds, again, that could periodically gust above 30 miles per hour to 35 miles per hour, may get closer to 40. South Boston, Danville, in the Charlotte Courthouse, again, it would be kind of in this area here from Lynchburg down to Danville and South Boston, where we would see the higher winds. This is heavily dependent on how much sunshine or how much of the air can mix those higher wind speeds down just off the surface, because if it ends up being a cooler wind, and again, I know the northeast is a pretty chilly direction for us this time of the year, that could protect the Roanoke Valley and New River Valley, those areas, from seeing a lot of the winds gusting, and even the areas east of the mountains. At some point, the wind has to win out. So we'll go somewhere about 80% of this forecast, I think, is what I will go through. So if I'm weighting that, again, I'm going from, maybe 20 to 35 mile per hour winds. And that's kind of in line with what the Weather Service is expecting. Again, there's no curveballs other than the thing going a little bit farther north and west, and that would obviously ramp up the winds gusting and the heavier rainfall getting a little bit closer to the area. As we go through early Friday morning, this is where it's at 2 a.m. Friday. The eye is past the Wilmington area. And again, a landfall can't be ruled out with this. I wouldn't put that out of the question from Charleston and the Myrtle Beach and Wilmington. But then as we go into late at night, Thursday night or the early Friday, it's becoming more of an Outer Banks storm. And so Outer Banks is going to get slammed the worst from probably Thursday night into early Friday morning. And that's where we could see a lot of the 100 mile per hour gusting here and a lot of the overwash on Highway 12 as we go into the day on Friday through about mid-morning or so. And even late morning to the early afternoon for Virginia Beach, winds will be coming in off this east-northeast path here, which puts it right into the coast. Virginia Beach sometimes will get hit harder than parts of the Outer Banks, depending on the storm. It's what happened with Isabel, because I was in the Outer Banks for Isabel, and some of the higher winds were occurring in Virginia Beach because of the buildings and things right up on the coastline. I will say, based on experience, that if you are right on the beach, things tend to be a lot worse than if you're just off the beach. And I'm talking about across the street. If you have a live crew that's on the sand or on the water, or on somewhere near there, the winds are so much stronger once that hurricane starts to move inland than they are on the other side of the hotel, even depending on the local effects there. So that's just a sign of the friction that happens here, and that's what the model is showing us here. Again, this is early Friday morning. Notice how much stronger the winds are just offshore. So this would be the wind at 70 to 75 miles per hour hitting right on the coast. And then as you go inland, you're down into tropical storm force, but strong tropical storm force winds forecast here. So let's go from this to reflectivity, and we'll go back and start it out here. This is 3 a.m. Thursday. All right, yeah. All right, so it's coming up on South Carolina, exiting Savannah, but Savannah's still getting hit pretty hard by this. 4 a.m. Thursday, 5 a.m. Thursday. Charleston starts to get into what could be the central dense overcast and even the eye wall, possibly, depending on what it depends to do. Exactly. But 7 a.m. on Thursday, it's a South Carolina system. But notice you're starting to get some rain falling up here around Wilmington and Fayetteville and Myrtle Beach as well. Even some heavier rain just south of Myrtle Beach as early as Thursday morning at 8 a.m. And then during the day, as I mentioned, Thursday is going to be the day we're going to watch, because you can see that eye predicted by the model here at about noon. It's just east of Charleston, South Carolina, so used to saying West Virginia. And then you've got the stronger bands here north of the storm, and those are some of the strongest bands because of the way the storm rotates counterclockwise, coming in and slapping you there in Myrtle Beach. Getting into early afternoon, continuing to see this churn right up the coast. And just keep in mind the damage that we see sometimes with Category 1 storms. This could be a Category 2. There could be a lot of trees down inland from Wilmington to Fayetteville and the Raleigh from this because the deciduous trees don't take a lot to knock those down compared to the stronger trees that you have on the coast. That's something else to keep in mind. Also, a lot of rain falling here. Notice all this rainfall that you see hour after hour. We're now at 7 p.m. on Thursday. And you can see a lot of heavy rain from Fayetteville to Lumberton and Wilmington here. There's that circulation. And those are extremely strong winds just off the coast. So again, this is something I'm watching for the potential for Carolina, Long Beach, and the Wilmington area to see, Thursday night by around 9 or 10 p.m. Some really intense weather moving overhead, with the potential, we could get into the eye, or we could be in the eye wall of this storm. I think the Hurricane Center takes it just east of that location, but they have they moved everything a little bit west. If I put the official forecast track on there, you can see that's a good representation to show you. This is the high-res NAM model with the hurricane potentially making landfall just south of Wilmington, but you can see the National Hurricane Center track is flashing. So this is not a big difference, but it would make a huge difference in sensible weather, depending on whether or not you're in the eye wall or not. That's a good example to show you of how things could change just by about 50 miles, and that puts some areas in the eye wall. It puts, you know, other spots in just the outer fringes of the storm, depending on if it takes the hurricane center track or if it tries to move a little bit farther closer to the coast. Sometimes what happens is the winds hit the coast and they bank up on the coast. That's called speed convergence, the friction of the coast stopping that wind. The wind doesn't go into the ground, obviously, right? So it has to rise, and that rising air sometimes will shift the storm a little bit farther as they come in like that in and a little bit closer to the coast. And there's also, I think that happens sometimes in the winter with some of our snowstorms as well. So that's what it's looking like. And again, I'll put this into motion here through the Outer Banks so you can see. This is 11 p.m. This will be 1 a.m. on Friday. And again, the closest the rain gets to us is about Danville to Charlotte Courthouse, if you believe this model. And I think I have no reason to doubt it right now. Again, I'm pretty much sticking with everybody else on this. No out of the pocket forecasting this time. I don't think it's going to do anything that's going to surprise many folks. The models have been so consistent. Each run, all the different spaghetti plots, they vary a little bit, but they're pretty much right on that track now. They've settled into that track, and now it's a matter of, you know, just like I say, 25 miles or so as to how much inland effects we'll see. But again, you got the potential for some power to go out here from Kinston, Greenville, all the way up to Virginia Beach, maybe into Petersburg, although I feel like this will be more of a weak tropical storm force gusting here east of our area officially. But again, we'll watch maybe for 35 mile per hour plus gusting around Danville into the Chatham area as we go into late Thursday. All right, so that's the cone right now. It's going to take it as it goes further up and accelerates up with the next cold front just to the east of Boston and out of the hair of New York and all the big cities as well. So it's going back out to sea with time, and it will speed up and become extra tropical with time as well. So that you can see that following the coast there. And again, the closest approach, because of the way the coast is shaped, North Carolina gets hit a lot by these storms because it sticks out, and you can see those outer bands there sticking out quite a bit. So that's a look at what to expect. I'll try to put some more graphics on for you later tonight and into tomorrow, and then we'll be on the road in the Wilmington area. Hopefully everything going well, and I've planned ahead, and I've got all my supplies and gassed up and extra gas in the car, in fact, and all the necessary batteries and protective gear that I would need to ride this thing out. So anyway, I think this would be trying to think how many hurricanes for me. This would be my first one in a long time if it gets as far inland or as close to Wilmington as it looks like it may. But I've been in others far worse than this one too. But my first one in Wilmington, so I'm anxious to see how that goes. So wish me luck and be praying for me. I'll be praying for you guys too, and I'll be watching things for you. We'll be providing updates as I'm down there, and we'll ride this out together. It looks to be mainly an Eastern Carolina storm, Eastern Virginia storm, and again, some weak effects back here at home, mainly in the form of some wind gusting and some clouds Wednesday and Thursday, and Thursday and Friday would be the wind to maybe watch. But and you know, we actually could use some rain back here at home, so maybe some of this rainfall could get up in here. I'll hold the rain chances at 40% Thursday, even though right now I think most of the modeling showing less than that. I do think we may see some interaction with that front coming in here for early Wednesday. That's your update for right now. Meteorologist Jamie Singleton. Brought to you by Southern Trust Home Services, 540-208-3425. Get into a Southern state of mind.